wake up. And so it's just planting that seed out there that this is beneficial for everybody. Um, to wake up and have a good day. But yesterday on our mindset or on our class, you know, somewhere in the live trading yesterday, um, you know, we talked about the different trades and how a person will take a trade. And I told them that if it's a not a good trade, it's okay to say, hey man, that trade sucks. To actually talk about it and actually call it out of not being a good trade. And this brought me to a conversation that I started thinking about that a lot of people like to do things alone and they don't like being called out. And then that got me thinking. I had another conversation with another person that was saying how grateful they are. They single, they alone, and they have more peace, not being in a relationship, not being together. And so in the mastermind, I just want to encourage everybody to keep everybody else accountable. And when it comes to trading, you can call somebody and says, "Hey, you know what? That trade sucked, right?" And I want to go over this thing of being single, right? Being solo and being single, right? This just says 10 years of lessons from being single applied to trade. That don't mean I've been single, in the last 10 years. I'm married, but there's a benefit of actually having a partner, and it's a benefit of trading together in a group. And so there's a cost, right? And so I always hear people tell me how well it is, and they're glad they can do everything, and they're glad they're single, and man, it's messed up. And so I just got an invite from one of my best friends to his wedding, and for a long time he was like, man, that family life is blah blah blah. And as he get older, I was like, oh damn, dude, I got an invitation from your wedding, and you getting married, and he's a couple of weeks before he had told me that man he is worried about his health and he don't want to be alone when he get old. And I was like, man, that's kind of opposite of what you've been telling me the last 10, 15 years. And so the friction that we had yesterday, and then getting an invite from one of my best friends for 40 years to talk about how happy he was being single. um you know I used to say that being with someone else, you have to learn patience and you have to learn to be accountable. And that's the hard part of being in a relationship with someone is, they can call you out, right? And so in the market, we are in a relationship. In the mastermind, we all have a relationship. And, if I say that, hey, that trade sucks or I don't believe in it, right? We had a conversation where we says, hey, you know, if someone says the trade sucks, that's actually a good thing because now you get to justify why it's a good trade, or they're going to help you save money and say, um, you know, help you save money because if you can't defend it, if you can't defend why you're in a trade, maybe you shouldn't be in that trade, right? If someone calls you out and asks you why you do some stupid shit and you can't explain it, right? That's actually a good thing, right? Because it's actually making you responsible, making you think. But when you by yourself, nobody calls you out, right? You get comfortable. So in life, accountability is a requirement. The people who love you most are the ones that's willing to tell you what you don't want to hear. In trading, that requirement is even more brutal because the market will eventually charge you for every blind spot no one was allowed to point out. So, I can read that again. In trading, if nobody calls you out and if you do things alone and silently, the market will eventually charge you for every blind spot that you have and that every blind spot you miss, right? So it's almost good that we have a group and a environment, even if I'm on a live call, that people can call and say, hey, you know what, that trade sucks. This trade is good. That's part of being in a mastermind, part of being around other people. So we don't want to be in isolation, right? When we're in the market, we want to be seen, we want to be heard. I want to say, hey, I like this, and hey, I don't like that call. That's a good part of being in a group environment, a relationship, right? It is that sometimes they call out things as in your blind spot. right? So independently sometimes becomes your greatest liability, right? You become the ruler of your kingdom. You got a kingdom of one, but a kingdom of one with no checks and balances is balanced. Um, is prone to silently decay, right? You're actually stronger together. So that's actually in life too. Having partners and having people that call you out and help you and hit your blind spots, right? If I want you to win, I want to make sure you don't miss nothing, right? If I'm in a relationship with my wife, my family, I don't want to make sure they miss something, or I want to minimize the dysfunction, right? In the market, I want you to call me out so I can save money. I don't want to be in a bad trades. So the more a person calls me out in the market, the more a person calls me out in trading, the better I can get because I can either make more money or I can stop from losing. So, execution is not the same as evaluation, right? You stand far better chance of success inside a trader circle, a support group, a mastermind that can see what you cannot see, right? And that is, I was telling the story that one of the traders that, you know, he's kind of like my mentor. He was telling me, man, why you in the mastermind? You need to get trade by yourself, blah blah blah. And I said it actually helps. So, being alone, I wanted to go over some of the warning signs of being alone and also being alone in the market. All right. And so when people tell you that being alone is so great, right? Here are some of the things that you think that is beneficial, right? But it becomes a obstacle. Here's the 8 lessons. The one is when you're single or you're alone, you get too used to be doing life alone. You get too comfortable doing life alone. It's almost to the point where when you are alone, right? It feels like freedom and strength. That man, I got nobody to answer to. I can just do whatever I want. Everything is I'm doing. I'm happy. I'm comfortable. And over time, your nervous system recalibrate. You stop knowing how to make space for somebody else's needs, or opinions, or presence. Every time somebody come around now after you've been alone for so long, it feels like friction. Fuck, man, somebody's coming and messing up what I'm doing, and I got to scoot over here. I got to think about somebody else, right? You become efficient at being by yourself and you become clumsy at partnership. So as a single kid, being a single kid, right? It is hard for a single kid to get in a relationship because they're not used to sharing. They're not used to, considering somebody else. So, they may be good by themselves, but they become terrible in being in partnerships. Right. And so that's one of the life lessons of you get used to doing things alone. You almost have an inability to work with somebody else. Right. And in trading, you run your entire process in a closed loop. You scan the market, you have management, you have all your skills inside your head. And then you stop knowing how to genuinely integrate outside input without feeling like it's an interruption or feeling like somebody's challenging you or feeling like your ego. Right. So the mental muscle of collaboration, analysis starts to decline. And the only perception you get in the market is your own. Right. And that becomes right the strongest edges live in the intersection. And it is the things that you may not have considered. When you're so used to being solo, you default to defending your idea rather than stress testing it, right? So I rather somebody, hey, call me out on the trade and let me defend it. And if I can't defend it, then I say, hey, that might be a bad trade. But when you're alone, you get you want to defend every position, right? And I want to be optimized for speed and comfort, not for the truth, right? I want to actually accept the truth and not just want speed and comfort. The truth will set you free. The truth will save you money in the market, right? And so in the mastermind, we train the muscle of holding conviction while remaining open. I believe in trades, but I don't care if somebody challenges it at any time because I want to know what they are thinking. I want to know their analysis, right? Them challenging my trade, my style, whatever, it doesn't stop me from making money. It only helps me, right? And that's how it stays adaptable. If I say the market is bullish and somebody says, nah, it's bearish, fuck, tell me why it's bearish. Because, maybe I'm going to change my thesis because I'm trying to make money. I'm not trying to be the right. right? I'm trying to be, my goal is to make money in the market, right? And so if your goal is to win in life and someone challenges you, isn't that a plus, right? Isn't that a help? Because maybe they're gonna hit a blind spot that you didn't think. You thought you was on the right path, right? And so that's number one. Number two, right? Your standards rise when you're single, but so does your intolerance. So you start thinking like, oh man, if I'm by myself and I had to get in a relationship, you know what? I don't want nobody to do this. I don't want nobody to do that. I want my standards up here. But as your standards go higher and higher of what you're looking for in a partner or what you're looking for in the market, your intolerance doesn't. Your intolerance also rises. That means you get irritable faster. That means that everything bothers you, right? You know exactly what you want, and that's growth. But you also start rejecting people and relationships at the first minor flaw. No one is good enough for you because your standards become a filter that protects you from disappointment and from connection. So you stop connecting with people. You start looking at everybody as like, oh man, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, right? And then in trading, the standard for A plus setup rises, necessary for survival, right? Our standards, I want an A to A trade. I want an A plus trade every trade. But in isolation, it mutates your hyper intolerance. You reject valid setups and the positive expectations, you know, goes down on B plus trades because you have imperfections, right? You become an armed critic of what's happening in the market instead of an active participant. And no one to tell you that, hey, the market is still good, right? It just had a pullback. It is still bullish, right? And so you demanding an impossible perfection from a messy market, right? The market is messy. We're in a relationship with a messy market, and it's never going to just go straight up, and it's never going to go straight down. It's going to be messy. So I want to get clarity, right? Because I can't be perfect in the market, and so the market pays for execution, not perfection. It pays you to get in a trade. It pays you to practice trading, right? People watch YouTube videos and they fucking study all day, but the market pays you for pulling the trigger, up or down. So your high standards protect capital, but intolerance paralyzes it. And over time, intolerance shrinks your opportunities. And so you miss out on a lot of opportunities. You miss out on a lot of relationships. You miss out on a lot of opportunities when you're looking for people to be perfect, when you're looking for the market to be perfect, right? And so, you know, when another member says, "Oh man, well I took that trade and it was good," right? Even without the perfect alignment, I still hopped in the trade and I still made money, right? They help you separate protecting your edge from protecting your ego, right? I got high standards with flexibility, right? For me to have partners and me to work with, man, for me to work with Mike, I got to have high standards with flexibility, right? For me to be married for 10 years, you got to be flexible, right? These are just standards, for my, one of my best friends to tell me that talk about marriage for so long and then send me an invite to his wedding. I want to push it in his face and be like, man, all the shit you talk, but you know what? It calls flexibility, right? And that's what's required sometimes. You become too comfortable without accountability. No one challenges your attitude, when you're off. No one points out when you're being selfish. No one points out when you're being lazy or inconsistent. You grow, but only in the direction that feels good to you, right? Your blind spot become permanent features of your personality, right? That's what happens when you're single. No one challenges you. So when you got a fucked up attitude, nobody says, "Hey man, like what's wrong? Like, like your attitude sucks." Right? You start to be comfortable with no accountability. In trading, no one sees you revenge trade after loss. No one catches you keep fucking. I had 13 trades on Monday, right? That's way too many trades. But being out in the open and being in the mastermind and letting people say and be like, hey man, damn, I thought your trade was 8. I thought the max trades you ever take was 8. And I counted, I had 13. So it's like I'm running lights. And in a environment, people know your rules and know how you trade, right? Nobody reviews your journal and says, "Man, you've broken your risk rule on every winner for 3 weeks." That's not discipline. That's ego. You developing a process built for emotional confidence instead of expectation. You just doing things. So the deeper truth, this is where expectations quietly dies. Without accountability, your rules become suggestions, right? Your process becomes performance or audience of one, right? You're trying to convince yourself of anything when you're the only audience, right? I can be teaching that, hey, I do max trades for a year and then I get 13 trades, right? And then when you're by yourself, that audience, it becomes, nobody's there to clap or to boo and tell you, hey, you did something wrong, right? The market eventually exposes every self deception, usually at the worst time at the highest cost. So whatever you're doing is wrong, right? The market gonna call you out eventually, right? I used to see people that were like, oh man, I just flipped my account, blah blah blah, and then they no longer trade because the market caught up with them. Going all in on trades, the market caught up with them, and I didn't have to know, right? The market caught them all in on a trade, right? And so, mastermind accountability. This is the single highest leverage reason to be in a mastermind, right? You sharing, you calling out. When a person falls, lead a mastermind, to me they should feel like a failure. It's like, man, you're around people that's winning, and you got to walk away, right? And it's like you're not doing the things you don't want to be forced to do the right things the right way, and it's the cost of self deception, socially and immediately, right? It Accountability turns rules from good intentions to into live discipline, right? It becomes a point where other people are showing up and they're making the adjustments. So, another part of being single is you start confusing peace with isolation. Fuck man, it's better when I'm by myself. Right? I love my peace. I don't want nobody disturbing my peace. Right? I don't have no conflicts when I'm by myself. I don't have to consider nobody else. I can just do what I want to do. And, real peace is staying grounded and regulated even when someone's close to saying things is getting messy. So if you can actually be around other people and still keep your peace, right? That's when you really have peace. It's not a false sense of peace. You actually got real peace, right? You can actually block out the messiness in the market. That's cool. That is a requirement. You have to block out the messiness because it's always gonna be messy. So if you sit in a dark room monitoring glowing phones and do not disturb, calling it peace. But if your process falls apart the moment someone questions your bias, that's not peace. It's an echo changer, right? And deep down, you don't have the peace that you said if you get bothered when someone challenges your trade, right? It's the avoidance of discomfort, and it's the problem of being seen as being corrected, right? You actually think someone challenging your trade is making you discomfort, not comfortable, when you can see it as a moment of truth. Oh, man, can I tell the truth right now of why I'm in this trade? And so the market will never give you peace. It gives you volatility, it gives you drawdown, it stresses you where your edge feels broken. The trader who's only practiced calm and isolation has no training for compulsive when the market starts to get messy and starts to get volatile and turns into, a whipsaw market, right? And it starts to present real challenges. Real trading peace is battle tested, not isolation at home, right? Real peace is not practicing off of a fake account, right? Real peace is actually being able to go in the market with real money and still be calm. All right. So, that is real peace. Is that when I can be around somebody and still keep my wits about myself. When they can't get me to yell and fucking go crazy, right? And then now they see that, damn, he has a shield. In the market, I gotta have a shield, right? And so in Mastermind, we practice regulated disagreement. I want to encourage you guys to look at, hey, you know what? I don't like that trade. Hey, why are you doing that? Right? For other people, they get upset. Man, bro? Like, why are you trying to call me out in front of people? right? In the mastermind, I want you to see it as helping one another, right? I want you to see it as, not being disruptive, but, trying to learn something, right? And so we build that kind of peace that survives being wrong in front of others and still show up the next day with discipline, right? That's what type of peace I want you to have. I want you to be upfront with your shit and still be cool with it. Right? You can be open and honest and still be loved, right? When you single, you build a life that nobody else has space for. You don't have space for nobody else. Your routine is just for you. It's for one person, right? When you single, like imagine a parent having a building a life that don't have space for their kids, right? When we have kids, we automatically build a life that we can tolerate them. Right? My evenings, my weekends, you can't even go to the bathroom if you got a kid and be in peace. You got to tell them, like, look, I'm trying to take a shit. I'm by myself. Let me have some peace. The kids will knock on the door and they slide shit on the door while you're in the bathroom. That is being a parent, right? That's having a family, right? And so, when you are single, nobody comes and knocks on the doors when you using the bathroom. Nobody disturbs you, right? Your evenings, your weekends, they all designed around your preference, right? And so even being single and then getting in a relationship, it makes it 10 times harder, right? Because unless you are preparing and practicing for that. So when somebody enters your life, it feels like everything has to be negotiated. The relationship feels like a disruption rather than an addition, right? So after being alone by yourself 20 years, right? 30 years. Now it's definitely gonna feel like a disruption. In trading, it's a fragile system, right? Your day, your review, your risk perimeters, all built for solo operation. You need the perfect coffee, the perfect silence, the exact indicators, right? And so when I go to a hotel, shit is off. When I go travel and I was trading off the 15 freeways and going with Josh to softball, right? I had to share the hotel room with her. I had to, share the space so I can trade. I used to go buy lights at Target because I needed more light in the hotel room. It was, I didn't want to have a fragile system of how I traded. It had to be able to work when I was out. It had to be able to work when I was comfortable at my home, right? And so this month now, Jade has a dance competition. I had to go to Vegas. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to trade off a small computer. I'm gonna have to do this call, right? And it's like, well, man, that's what we built. Our system is built for that, right? It can't be closed in one scenario. I have to be able to do it when I'm out. I have to be able to travel. I have to be able to trade anywhere, right? And I have to be challenged that I can do it, right? And so the model, doesn't exist that everything has to be comparable. And that's the mastermind antidote. We deliberately build a space for input, structured ways to share plays before execution, right? And we see people trading from anywhere, and some people at work, some people on vacation, right? Inclusion is part of the system, not an add-on, right? The process gets stronger as we do more life, right? We had people trading on dialysis, we had people trading on COVID, we had people trade in all type of environments, right? And that means the process gets stronger and we see it. So that's another thing that when we have space for other people, we also learn from other people, right? Number six, we become emotionally guarded without realizing it. When you by yourself, and even when you're in a relationship, right? You sometimes, you say, "Man, I healed. I talked to a therapist. I'm all good," but you built walls so high that even somebody that is trying to help you, you know, it bounces off, right? Your protection becomes your prison. This is what I realized when I went to Acapulco and I was, heavy in crypto. I realized that everybody that was in crypto that was thinking the government was going to take all their shit and we the dollars going to crash. And they was some people was leaving their family because they was in COVID and they was like, man, well, I have to leave. It became a prison, them going to Mexico and not having to leave all their family behind, leave everything because of their fear, right? And they didn't realize how much fucking stress they was causing themselves by avoiding, of not staying with their family and being somewhere in a different country, isolated. So sometimes people become so emotionally guarded by themselves that they're maintaining so much energy to be guarded, to not trust people and put their guards up against everybody. So they become emotionally guarded without realizing. In trading, right? I've survived the blowups, the drawdowns, right? You call yourself healed, but you become guarded with your own process. You start hiding losing trades. Refusing to admit the rules are hard to follow. Terrified of feeling the past pain. So you cut winners instantly and hesitate on conviction trades, struggling to commit the proper size on very setups that are built to pay you. You fail to take the obvious trades, right? And I asked myself yesterday, man, why didn't I take Marble? Marble's in my scanner all day. Well, that's becoming I was guarded, right? It's like, man, it was too obvious, right? And so the least in your trading is always emotional and perceptional, what you perceive before they're technical. If you can't show the wound, you can't write the medicine. If you can't show your wounds, you can't get the right medicine. Right? Walls built to keep out pain, also keep out profits. So when you can't tell you what you're doing wrong and you can't admit to your problems, you can't get the medicine. So in the mastermind, we normalize showing the process, including the ugly parts. I'm telling you guys, hey, yesterday I messed up on Marble. The day before I had too many trades. Vulnerability here it's not a weakness. It's the fastest path to redefining your edge. You show the trade went wrong, you show the emotion behind it, and someone can hand you the exact insight you can see, right? And this is what the accountability and the mastermind does, right? At least it does that for me, right? Actually showing every trade. Some days I wake up and say, man, I ain't got no energy. I need y'all to speak. I need y'all to talk to me. I'm telling you, I got used to telling you, hey, what I need, right? If you have a wife or you have a partner, you get used to telling them, hey, I need this. Man, I just need a hug today, right? I need somebody to show me some love, right? You can say that to your partner, but when you are isolated, you don't say shit. You just get angry, right? When you lose the money in the market, you just get angry. We don't know if you're revenge trade. We don't know what you're going through emotionally. All right, so man, you start idolizing love instead of practicing. When you've been single for so long, you start thinking what love is really what it should look like. And that becomes you become an expert. You're observing everybody else. You know that what works and what doesn't. But love is not a spectator sport. It requires daily, messy, in arena work. It requires you to have arguments. It requires you to communicate. It requires you to adjust. It's just theory without practice, right? If you just idolizing about love, if you idolizing about trading, oh man, I'm a paper trade. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna draw up these charts. Blah blah blah. Fucking, you need to trade, right? The same way you idolize how good you're gonna be, you gotta actually get bit. You gotta get busy. You gotta get in the market. And whether it's just one trade, you gotta take some trades because you gotta strengthen that muscle. Because you can practice on paper and that shit can be all perfect, but you haven't built your emotional muscle up. You haven't built that skill. So it works in practice, but in theory, it's a low stake environment, right? You don't have nothing to risk. You don't have nothing to lose when you trade in paper. So eventually, you got to take a contract. You got to pull a button, right? So trading mastery is roughly 10% analysis, 90% execution under pressure, right? If you don't have no pressure in trade, it ain't real trade. So you can practice the perfect setup in your head and avoiding discomfort of life, right? But accountable execution is the version that makes you get better. So we force practice in DCG. I tell people, man, you're gonna trade with me, you're gonna put some real money in, at least one contract. I want you to tell me what you trade before you do it. I want you to put it in the group. I want you to put it in the chats, right? This is actually being in an arena, not just in the film room. I'm getting your ass on the field. All right. And so the longer you wait being single, the harder it can be to adapt. Right. So the longer you're single, the harder it's gonna be to adapt. The longer you stay in a solo pattern, the more your identity routines and nervous system wired for independence. Opening up later just means you add someone new, but actively unlearn years of self-protection. It's possible, it's just harder. Right. And so the longer you trade in a silo, the more your identity becomes a guy who figures it out alone. Your process becomes sacred. Your blind side becomes invisible. Right? And so you find inside you need a community, you have to unlearn the belief you can do it, you can be the best by yourself, right? And the market rewards adaptability above almost everything else. Experience, and so By the time the pain of isolation is felt, the market may have already moved to a new paradigm. That's why we have to adjust in the market, right? We make adaptation a group norm. In DCG, we adapt, so we evolve, and we kill dead setups. We integrate new data, right? The group made changes feel less like a threat and more like a shared upgrade. So every time we make a change, it feels like an upgrade. So, I know I'm running over my time. I don't want to, but I had a lot more to go over. Maybe I'll do a part two, but I did do something because I knew that this was going to get deeper. I have a document that I created, and it's called the Solo Traders Paradox. And it's the 8 traders, 8 traps, right? The ghost in the machine, you internalize everything, your edge become invisible to even you, right? The perfect setup myth, high intolerance relates high standards. I hope this has helped somebody in trading, maybe in life, but I'm gonna put this document. Actually, let me put it in the group right now. Let me put it in the mastermind in this chat so you guys can get it before you hop off this call. I need to I need to get to my routine as well. Man, who's the enterprise group Fireflies? I gotta make sure that they're active member. All right, I see these Fireflies.
I got them and they are not, and they are removed.
Yeah, man, you waited today. They were halfway here the whole call.
No, you just checking the
uh,
chat right now, right? Oh,
oh,
they were
okay,
out the
okay, my
first 2 minutes.
bad.
You know, I got you, sir.
Yeah, hey, send a message to them personally. Tell them to turn their Fireflies off.
All right, got you.
Right. Hey, I appreciate you guys. I will check my messages and I'll see you guys. If it's a long message, I ain't gonna respond to after the market is open or after 9 o'clock.
And if
So,
something I can help you with, send me the message.
I appreciate you guys. And that's what we have partnerships for, right? So we can have teamwork, right? It's hard to do everything by yourself. That is one of the things. All right, peace out.